So in 2022, depending on which lists you're looking at, I watched anywhere from 207 to 218 movies. Some of those were rewatches, not a whole lot of them, but some of them definitely were. But for my movie review pages, what I did was I downloaded the movie posters for each one of these. So what I'm going to do, I have 207 posters in this category, and I'm going to do a lightning round run through where I give you just in alphabetical order every movie that I have cataloged that I watched this year, and like a one word, one sentence description of it. So let's get going. Here's everything I watched this year. 8-Bit Christmas. This is a Christmas story for kids who grew up in the 80s. It's cute enough. This was boring in every way possible. The Adam Project is exactly what you think it's going to be once you see that it's a sci-fi comedy with Ryan Reynolds. American Kung Fu Nazis was a huge mess, but kind of had some fun moments. All Quiet on the Western Front is a really solid movie, and I've heard the new one doesn't fare as well, but I really appreciated watching this. Ambulance was probably my favorite Michael Bay movie. It does a really great job of keeping the tension wrapped up in just that one little section. American Underdog is so Christian in its production values. Amistad I remember liking, but it's not one that stuck with me. Andrei Rublev is maybe my easiest Tarkovsky I've seen yet, but still not my bag. Anna Christie, I read the play and I thought it ended differently, but Greta Garbo is really good in this. Annie and the Apocalypse I didn't like as much as I was supposed to. I feel like the musical numbers were kind of half-hearted. Annie Live just reminded me that I don't like Annie, and Harry Connick Jr. is really bad in this. I don't remember Anybody's Woman. The Appointment is a pretty good Sidney Lumet about obsession. Not nearly as good as his others on the same topic, but pretty decent. Porno de Dame is one that did not sit with me. A lot of these 1930 ones, were hard to distinguish from each other. Avalon was an Elijah Wood movie I watched. I think it was okay. Ball of Fire is in my top 5 for the year. I can't believe I hadn't watched this before. It's so funny and so charming. Barbarian didn't quite live up to the hype that I thought it would, but it's still a really solid horror movie. Being the Ricardos is a really sleek attempt, and it doesn't ever actually land. Belfast is not my kind of movie. I get people who love it, people who'd be very moved by it, but that's not me. Benedetta leaned too heavily into the salacious and not enough into the philosophical for me to really resonate with it. The Big Trail was had some good effect scenes and had little baby John Wayne in it, but otherwise it's not that interesting a movie. The Big House is, again, the first, a lot of firsts from 1930. The Big House was the first prison film. It's okay. Big Bug was the new Jean-Pierre Jeunet, and it absolutely has all of his stylistic hallmarks, and I had a great time with it. The Big Heat had some interesting angles to tackle the film noir from, but ultimately it doesn't work for me. Billy the Kid is a really boring retelling of this story. There are other versions of this that are better. The Black Phone felt like it was trying to take a short story and cram it out into a longer movie, and it felt a little stretched thin, but it's a really solid concept and has some really good moments. The Blue Angel I found really haunting. It's probably one of my highest ranked of the 1930s so far. I don't remember Born Reckless. I think that's a gangster one, but it clearly didn't land with me. Bottle Shock is cute and silly, and it's kind of grown in my, I felt warmer about it as time has gone on. A Boy and His Dog is weird, and I kind of love it. Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee is a solemn and really well-told historical epic, and I appreciated it. Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers was one of the only franchise movies I watched this year, and I'm so tired of them. City Girl is super charming. It's definitely one of my other highest ranked from 1930. City Hall is fine. It does what it's trying to do. It's not that interesting. The Kid in Come On, Come On is really good. I didn't really care for the movie as a whole. Come From Away is, I love my filmed stage versions. This is really good. The Congress was a weird mess of a movie that I liked the ambition, but I didn't care for the execution at all. Count of Monte Cristo was kind of disappointing. It didn't feel like it really understood what the original book was trying to do in its story of revenge. Not my favorite. Critical Care is a weird comedy, dark comedy that usually doesn't land, but it was definitely not what I was expecting it to be. Darkness has some good twists and some good moments, but overall kind of a subpar horror movie. The Dawn Patrol. So I watched the wrong one for this. I thought this was the 1930 version. It's not. This is the 1937 version. I don't think the story is strong enough for me to want to go back and watch the 1930 version. This has some good acting, though. Death on the Nile is way less good than Murder on the Orient Express. Devil's Holiday is like City Girl, but if the parents were right about her being a gold digger. Oh, I hated Dirty Harry so much. Don't Look Up, I don't think makes any salient useful points as a satire, but it was really cathartic. The Doorway to Hell, I do not remember. Dressed to Kill, I have a kind of a moral objection to the way that the story ends, but Brian De Palma is a really interesting filmmaker. Drive My Car is probably one I need to rewatch. It's so slow, and I think it's worth watching and worth getting into, but it didn't fully do it for me on the first watch. Earth is worth watching. Earth's a powerful story. Everything Everywhere All at Once, everybody loved this, I'm no exception. There's gotta be a joke about how the Expendables movie is expendable. It is. A Fairy Tale After All is the worst made movie I saw this whole year. Falling in Love takes two really interesting actors and makes them extremely boring. The writing in Finch is just off, the whole thing is just off. 5 Feet Apart is cute, but The Fault in Our Stars is definitely a better version of basically the same story. The Flamingo Kid is fine. It's cute and interesting, and Matt Dillon's kind of fun in it. Flea is really solid. It's an animated documentary, which is something that I haven't seen a lot, and I really like the way that they use that to tell the story. Forever Young is a really fun concept, but it doesn't always work. 40 Guns made me realize that I really, really like older Barbara Stanwyck. She plays really interesting characters, and she's definitely the best part of this movie. Framed is one that I don't remember. I told you, a lot of these 1930 crime ones are all basically the same story. The French Dispatch is exactly what I expected from Wes Anderson. It looks great, it's charming, I don't remember a thing. Fresh is such a weird and funny and dark comedy, and I didn't expect it to go the direction it did, and I really liked it. Fundamentals of Caring is a little saccharine, and I'm not sure that it really does a great job with it, but the acting is pretty decent. Tessa Thompson and Melissa Leo really carry this movie, and because they are good, the rest of the movie works. Garbo Talks is something very different than I expected when I was watching Sidney Lumet films, and it's definitely worth a watch because it's different. Glass Onion was great. I had so much fun with it. Maybe not as good as Knives Out, but pretty close. Gloria is one of the worst Sidney Lumet films. There's just nothing likable about this one. The Gray Man was a letdown. Chris Evans as a villain I will always take happily forever, but the rest of it was really boring. The Great McGinty was not something that I really fell in love with. I don't quite understand Preston Sturges' style of comedy. It's not mine. Guilty as Sin was a ton of fun for just being this a sleazy thriller. The half of it is really cute. I wish there was more chemistry developed between the romantic leads, but it's a really sweet story. Hand-Rolled Cigarette is okay. I don't know, it's fine. Hell's Angels is big and melodramatic, and I had a good time with it. HMS Defiant is really interesting in terms of its lead too. I definitely would recommend this one. This version of Holiday was before the one with Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant, and I think I prefer the acting in this one actually. The Hot Rock apparently was a comedy. I didn't realize that until the last 20 minutes. The House is like any anthology film, has some good and some bad parts, but the parts that I loved, I really loved. Hustle is fine. I Want You Back has so much chemistry between the leads and all the supporting characters, and it doesn't do anything new with the genre, but it's cute. Internal Affairs, the most fun part of it is seeing Richard Gere as a villain. He doesn't get to do that very often, but most of it is just kind of okay. It's a Gift was a good introduction to W.C. Fields for me. It did make me want to watch more of his other movies. Ivan's Childhood is probably Tarkovsky's most linear, easy to follow narrative, so if you are like me and don't like his other work, this is a pretty good starter. Jeopardy was one of my surprise underground hits. This is a really solid little 70-minute movie. John and Mary doesn't quite get as in-depth as it wants to, but it's this sort of talky romantic drama that is okay. Juno and the Paycock is so melodramatic and interesting as a very early Hitchcock. Just Imagine is charmingly weird, an early sci-fi set in the far-off world of the 80s. The Killers did a really good job of unraveling its mystery a little bit at a time and keeping me interested the whole way through. Kimmy is so claustrophobic. I had such a good time with this one. King Richard is okay. I find him the least interesting part of their story, but it's fine. Ladies of Leisure is probably most interesting for being early Frank Capra and early Barbara Stanwyck, but that's about it. A Lady to Love is fine, I think. L'Âge d'Or is an arty, art house surrealism film that I just don't care about. Last Night in Soho is not like anything Edgar Wright has ever done, but I was not mad at it. Last of the Mobile Hotshots was a tough watch. The Last of the Mohicans has a really gorgeous score, but it's so boring. Laughter was one that I keep remembering because I really liked the dynamic between the main lead two. The Cercle Rouge is a movie I'm pretty sure I saw. A Letter to Three Wives is super good. I really love how each three of the women gets their own really fully fleshed out story, and I love how the movie stays a little bit romantic, even though it's this very cynical narrative. Licorice Pizza is such a long movie, and I don't get it. Lilium is Carousel, and it's not good. Little Nikita is very cheesy, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. The Lost Daughter is a good first directorial effort, but it still needs some polish, I think. The Lost City was really charming, and I didn't expect it to be, but like Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum have amazing chemistry, and there are some genuine laughs in here. Lead, Life, and Goldfish is a really great idea, but the movie never really works for me. Mad Dog and Glory is super worth watching, if only to watch Bill Murray as a gangster and Robert De Niro as like the underdog, nervous everyday man. Madam Satan is a wild ride, and I had so much fun with it. Mad God is terrifying, and not always in a great way. I wish there was more of a narrative to it. Manon of the Spring is a really heartfelt and satisfying sequel to Jean de Florette. The two really go together, and it was nice to finally see this. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On works so much better than it should. It's really cute. Margin Call is a really interesting thriller, and I had a good time with it. The Mark of Zorro is not the best Zorro movie I saw this year, but it's fine. Marry Me was a disappointment. Like, I like both these actors okay, but they just had no chemistry together, and I did not care. Mask of Zorro was my favorite Zorro movie I watched this year. It's just super fun and super swashbuckly and everything I wanted it to be. Mass is incredible. It's this one-room drama with 4 just amazing actors, and it's so powerful and beautiful and beautifully done. Matilda ended up being my favorite new movie of the year. It's just absolutely delightful and shot so well, and the music is fantastic, as the music to the original show always was. The Medicine Man was forgettable. Melvin and Howard is... it feels like a 10-minute short that they tried to turn into a full movie, and it doesn't hold up. Men was... I loved it so much. It's controversial. A lot of people hated it. I thought it totally worked. Metal Lords is... I'm sure I'm not supposed to say the movie about a metal band was cute, but it is. It's a cute coming-of-age movie, and it's sweet, and I love seeing these kids find what makes them happy. Min and Bill is really forgettable. Mirage, Gregory Peck is really good in it. The story, I think, doesn't quite hold up, although maybe another rewatch would change my mind. Moby Dick was definitely a lot more interesting than the book, but still kind of eh. Morocco, I just remember hating Gary Cooper in it. Mosaic is a weird little animated superhero movie that was cute. It felt like the pilot for a TV series. Murder was a little bit more like what I was expecting from early Hitchcock, but it's not as tight as a lot of his later stuff. Murphy's War is a decent concept, but they don't really flesh out the main character enough for me to care. Mutiny on the Bounty, Marlon Brando was really good in it. Like, a lot of people hated him in it, but I thought it worked. My Daughter's Killer has a terrible poster and was kind of a lackluster documentary. My Reputation is one of the less interesting stand-ups I watched this year. The Naked Prey has some really gorgeous visual images of Africa, but it's also pretty pro-colonialism, which is not so much I am. Nightmare Alley is so long. Nobel's son thinks it's a lot smarter than it is. Nomads is completely befuddling, and if the story had made any sense, I think I would have really liked it. Nope is really great. I don't like it as much as Peele's first two, but it's really good. The Northman is just not something that appeals to me in any way. Once Upon a Time in America is fine as far as 3.5-hour crime epics go. One Way Pendulum is a weird movie that never quite gets to where it needs to be, but it's got a couple really funny moments. The Outfit is an interesting, quieter thriller, and Mark Rylance is, as always, great. The Palm Beach Story is really cute, but I wish that I laughed more during it. Paradise is a forgettable 90s coming-of-age romance drama. I don't know what even to call it. It's not that great. Paramount on Parade is a weird time capsule of a movie, and I kind of wish that I had waited to watch it until after the other 99 1930 movies had happened. The Parting Glass is trying to be a really ambitious, small cast, play-driven, dialogue-driven story, and it just ends up being kind of clunky. Passing didn't have much of an impact on me when I first watched it, but it's one that I keep coming back to mentally. People on Sunday is one that I do not keep coming back to mentally. The Perfumier is, it's like fanfic of Perfume the Story of a Murderer, and not in an interesting way. Petite Maman is beautiful. Pink Floyd The Wall hit me in a way that I did not expect, and became one of my favorites of the year. The Pirate movie is maybe kind of terrible, but I had a good time with it. Power is like 3/4 of a good movie. The Power of the Dog is a slow burn that suddenly pays off at the end. Prix de Beauté is a title that I can never pronounce, and but it's kind of an interesting story. Rajeshyam is a charming romance with really boring songs. Radio Flyer is a strange movie that seems to be like romanticizing traumatic childhoods in a way I don't really like. Raffles is a fun gentleman thief movie. Reaching for the Moon is entirely forgettable. Remember the Night is one that I really wanted to enjoy more as like a holiday movie, and it gets a little overly sentimental in a way that doesn't gel for me. The River is beautifully filmed, and I really liked the central character. She really held the story together for me. Robbery is apparently a movie I saw. The Romantics had some moments that worked. It works better to me as like a scene study for actors than like an actual movie. The Rose is really interesting, actually. Bette Midler does a really great job in this one. RRR, one of my favorites of the year. So big, so silly, so much fun. Sancho the Bailiff really tore at my heartstrings. Like this was a tough movie to watch, but in the best way. Sarah and Son just like would not let up on the tragedy and the melodrama in a way that I kind of found grating. Scaramouche was one of my top 5 of the year. So much fun, so delightful. Scent of a Woman just like always tread that line between being like too cheesy Oscar baity and like genuinely good, and I never was quite sure where it landed. Session 9 has some good cheap scares. She's All That was such a disappointment. Like these characters have zero chemistry together whatsoever. There is no indication that they should be together. Shoot the Moon is just pretty boring. Showtime was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Like I kind of like this one. Sisters is a wild ride. I'm learning I really like Brian De Palma as a filmmaker, and I had a really good time with this one. Skater Girl is sweet, but for me, mostly forgettable. And now let's look at another teenager sitting down, dreaming about their hobbies. Sneakerella was not great. Something the Lord Made was more interesting on a historical education level than it was as an actual story. The Song of Lunch is unlike anything I saw this year. It's a film interpretation of a poem, and probably worth watching just for something completely different. Space Pirate Captain Harlock was had some good moments, but overall didn't really capture my attention. Steam Boy, on the other hand, was really interesting, and I keep remembering this one. A Stranger Among Us is a mess. Street of Chance was something I saw super early, and I don't remember it. Studio 666 is a ton of fun, a little weird to watch now that Taylor Hawkins of the Foo Fighters is no longer with us, but it's such a fun movie, and they're having so much fun with it. Summer Holiday was delightful, like exactly what you want from your Technicolor 1960s movie musicals. Sundown... Super Lopez is very silly, and I really liked it. Swing Shift is better as a concept than it is in its execution. Tell It to the Bees is really charming and really lovely, and you just really kind of root for these characters the whole way through. The Tinder Swindler is fine as a documentary. If you like true crime, there you go. Tiny Furniture is Lena Dunham, and I haven't found my way into liking her yet. Tower is the second animated documentary on this list this year, and it's really great. The Tragedy of Macbeth looks beautiful, but I don't like Denzel Washington's Macbeth at all. Turning Red is so wonderful. It's super charming and super lovely. Umberto D had a really big impact on me that I didn't expect. Like, it's one that I keep thinking about. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent kind of seemed like a fluffy adaptation, but it's fun. Union Pacific was most fun for seeing little baby Robert Preston in it. It's a big movie. The Vagabond King was fine. The Velvet Underground weirdly didn't have enough music in it. Walk on the Wild Side is such a sleazy melodrama, and I had such a good time with it. These female characters are all my favorite. Weekend was almost the Jean Godard film that I liked, and then I didn't. Weird, the Al Yankovic story is exactly what it looks like, and it's a ton of fun. Weird Al Angels was kind of lackluster. It just made me want to go watch the original. West Front 1918 is like a more visually driven version of All Quiet on the Western Front. What Happened Brittany Murphy taught me about Brittany Murphy. Winter Light was really depressing. With Bird at the South Pole was a really interesting like early documentary in the Antarctic. Kind of worth watching just for the novelty of it. The Worst Person in the World is one that didn't really gel for me. I think I just don't connect to this character. Yes Day is a kid's movie. You Only Live Twice was pretty fun as far as Bond goes. Definitely more on the silly, ridiculous side, which is where I land. And looks like those were all the movies I watched in 2022. So there we go. You know, my 2-second thoughts on them. Some of these I have not posted my long reviews for, my full reviews for, because I am like 6 months behind on that. So some of these you'll hear more of my opinions in the coming months.